reading log for my Latine author read, rate, and review series where I read books from Latine authors with Latine characters, preferably, and judge them on representation, representation to me specifically, but sometimes in general, and because we should have more Latine stories, because, yeah. So, this quarter's book, because this also relates to my quarterly book club over on my Ko-fi. You can check that out down below for members. And this this quarter's book is a shorter book. So this is actually August. I know the quarter starts in June, but this is August because it is a smaller book. We are reading The Last Cuentista by Donna Barbara. Herrera. No, that's wrong. Now I struggle with names, but I have known about this book for a while. It has been on my radar for a while, and I am very interested to read a Latine inspired sci-fi. This is, as I said, a smaller book. This is a middle grade, which is even more intriguing. There isn't a lot of Latine science fiction in general that I'm aware of. If you know of some Rex, please put them down below. So I'm really interested that this is a middle grade, because it's great to have children literature that is Latine inspired, but also to have a sci-fi one too, because there's a lot of fantasy, or a lot relative. There's a good amount now of fantasy inspirations of Latine, especially children's literature, but in adult also. And there is a good amount of contemporary, whether it is contemporary in the sense of like the immigration story or romance. So those are growing bigger and bigger. And the speculative part is slowly growing, but sci-fi again is not something that's huge, I've noticed. So super excited. I'm gonna read the description to you. So había una guerra. Yes. There's no R in there. Yes. Oh my God, words. About una vez, there lived a girl named Beta who wanted nothing more than to be a storyteller like her abuelita. But Betita's world is ending. Earth has been destroyed by a comet, and only a few hundred scientists and their children, among them Betita and her family, have been chosen to journey to a new planet. They are the ones who must carry on the human race. Hundreds of years later, Betita wakes to this new planet and the discovery that she is the only person who remembers Earth. The sinister collective has taken away the ship during its journey, bent on erasing the sins of humanity's past. They have systematically purged the members of all aboard, or purged them all together. Betita alone now carries the stories of the past, and with them any hope for our future. Can she make them alive again? Okay, sorry if that angle moved. My stand suddenly tried to fall. What a very honor-winning author Donna Barbara Higuera presents us with a brilliant journey through the stars to the very heart of what makes us human. So, it's a girl who finds herself on another planet, space. space travel, and she's the only one that remembers Earth. She's the only one that remembers stories because she wants to be a storyteller. So, very intrigued. Very, very intrigued. And per story graph, the general content warnings, which again I always recommend go to StarGraph, check out all the content warnings there. Whether it's grief, death of parent, confinement, graphic, grief, death of parent, confinement, a moderate amount of death, murder, and ableism, and then a minor amount of genocide and violence. So I feel like if the whole planet is destroyed, genocide would be higher, maybe moderate. I don't know. We'll see when I read the book. But yes, so that is our read for this month. We'll see if this turns into more of a review or a vlog. It always depends. I am expecting that I will read this quickly. I am expecting to very much enjoy this read and that I will finish it quickly. So, which is why I made myself wait till August, because I was like, I'm gonna finish this before I realize it. Also, it does have an average rating of 4.18, which is pretty good. I think if you are at a 4, that is amazing. Because really, you're only a 5 if you are people's top favorites. Like for me, it's really hard to have a 5. You're gonna be top favorite. And the fact that you have more ability on StarGraph to do like 4.4, 4.5, 50, 75. A 4 can be very broad now on StoryGraph. Again, I'm not looking at Goodreads, but StoryGraph. So, a 4.18, that's almost like 25, so it's a solid story. So yes, I am greatly looking forward to this. We'll see how long it makes me. I'm going to try and read this slowly. Lord knows that does not always work for me, and I tend to just burn through books quickly if I enjoy it. So, but yeah, that's it. And again, for future quarters, if you are wanting to see what I'm reading ahead of time for these events, and not all of the book club reads become videos, but only videos are book club reads. That makes sense? But either way, if you're wanting to see what the book club is reading and want to know my in the moment reactions as in moment as they can be, then check out the Ko-fi and become a member, and you can check out there, because in the comments I always have it set up at 25, 50%, 75, 100% for us all to check in and see what we like at that point. And in those are spoilers, but outside of those pre-comments that I make, people can talk about however they want. Just always check your spoilers. So, yeah, I'll see you in whatever the next one is. Hello, and welcome back. So, this turned into a review and not a vlog, because I was reading it. Obviously, I was driving. I read a lot of it actually at work, being that I'm transitioned now to working on the desk, which means I when I'm doing paperwork, I can listen again. So let me remind us of what we're reading, even though you would have just seen that, but whatever. We read the last Cuentista, and if this is middle grade, this was amazing. I would say this is definitely upper middle grade. It dealt with some really hard stuff. The character was also, I would say upper middle grade age. They were 13, right on that cusp. So, this was intense. Like, intense. So this does take place in the near-ish future, and the world is going to be destroyed by Halley's Comet. And our main character, Pedra, now I know how to say her name, wants to be a storyteller like her grandmother, which is, they tell cuentistas, which is why she's a cuentista. And but her parents want her to be, like scientists like them. But because they're scientists, they're allowed to escape the world. They're going on this, Noah's Ark-esque kind of ship thing. They're going to travel out to another galaxy and populate the world and start a new life. And they're going to be on the ship that has all the scientists. So part of this situation that the government, and this is specifically the United States, not like the world at large. So Petra and her family lived in New Mexico. So she doesn't necessarily self-identify as anything very specific, but her grandmother, her abuela, tells stories about the Guadal, Aztec war. She tells a story about La Llorona, not the grandmother, but Petra. So there's a lot of definitely, not that there are a lot of stories of La Llorona across many different Latine cultures, but still that idea of very much like here, most likely Mexican American ethnicity. That's what I'm going to go with, unless someone says otherwise, unless the author has said otherwise. If that's the case, let me know down below. But, and I'll pin it if you can tell me and give me a resource of, yes, the author stated this, whether it's a tweet from the author or in an article, then yeah. But so Storygraph has this labeled as fiction, middle grade, science fiction, adventure, emotional, hopeful, medium pace. So I would definitely agree with the medium. I was about to disagree with the medium pace and say it's fast paced, but really thinking about it, no, I would say it's like medium to fast. Not that that's an option, but like somewhere in between there. I enjoyed this a lot, and I think this is a very good representation of what we could see in the future, sort of. So how can I say it? How can I understanding that something as homogenous could bring stability, because you never want to hurt your own. And many people think if you are me and I am you and we are our own, then we can't hurt each other, because why would you hurt yourself? But the fault in that is that happens all the time. Civil wars are a reason. Brothers against brothers, families against families, twins. There are definitely stories of twins hurting each other, killing each other, and then kind of self-harm oriented, but people also hurt themselves. So the bad guys, the group, is kind of falls in that line of like homogeny without spoiling too much. And they're very hypocritical in that sense. And it's kind of sad. And there is a nice jump in time, because in order for them to be alive when they get to the new planet, she has to go in like a stasis pod, like cryo sleep kind of. So it's been many hundreds of years. And throughout that time, these people who were running the ship while they were asleep have done that, have changed, have altered themselves. They were originally called monitors, and they were the ones that had agreed to go on this ship, and they would be allowed on the ship in exchange for taking care of all the pods and all the people, and they would live and die on the ship. So, but their descendants would then be able to be on the new planet. So, and these are just normal, everyday people that have made this choice. And they're all different. And the author makes a point when Petra is walking into the ship, noticing the range of colors of everybody on the ship. Everyone's difference, everybody's uniqueness about themselves, and then the contrast. And Petra calls back to it later, talking about how homogenous, again, without talking about spoils too much because that's later, referencing how homogenous the group is now that she's awake so many years in the future. So I'm trying to like not spoil. But yeah, so and there's very much this idea of grief in many different ways, playing a huge part. Is literally the fine line that goes through the whole story. But grief is played in many different ways for many different reasons, and how she handles it, and how her mental aging and her ability to process very much changes and reflects as grief with a backboard as the story goes forward. So it's very good. And I very much felt that idea of your abuela or your nana or your grandmother. I couldn't think of the English word for a second there. That idea of being attached to an older family member and eventually having to lose them. The difference is that the abuela cannot go with them on the ship because she's too old. And I kind of get the feeling that she doesn't necessarily want to either. She wants to be here, die on Earth when Halley's Comet hits. So I wrote so in track 3, and it was, I think, my comment in our Ko-fi board at 25%, I was like, okay, like 1% in already. I already want to cry. Already want to cry. I put here, the story barely started, I want to cry. Over here, I said, okay, like 1% in, I already wanted to cry. Also, I can't believe how dry and emotionless the higher people are, and how separate they are from the people they're caring for. So, yeah. That comment, I feel kind of redacted-ish, because the person specifically that was supposed to monitor the children in the section she was in, his name is Ben. We meet him very early on, so not spoiler. He is not emotionless, very opposite of that. But he is very much, when business needs to get done, business needs to get done. So, yeah, be fair warned. First 1-2%, you may cry, especially if you have a very strong relationship with your grandmother or an older family member, someone you may see as an abuela or an abuelo. Yeah, there's gonna be emotions, but that grief from that emotion very much, I would say, transforms into a very hopeful spot. So, I'm going to cut here for the spoiler part so I can go over all of my bookmarks that I have and my thoughts, and also what I wrote in the Ko-fi. And yeah, so I'll put, well, it'll be chaptered as spoiler and then spoilers end. But yeah, I'll see you guys in a second. Feel free to skip. Okay, so spoilers. The group totally gives off the vibe of white supremacists, Nazis. Yeah. So, but in the guile of not putting race in. So I just had to say that for sure. It definitely felt like they were coded as white supremacists, Nazi-esque situation. And again, this is coming from someone who is living through 2023, 2022, 2021, where, President Trump was president. The idea of white supremacy is very strong. So that is where my mind went. That is based off of the time right now. So let's go over my bookmarks and my thoughts. That all this spoilers. So by track 8, I put OMG, a new definition on book bans. And this was in reference to when Ben ran back, or Ben was messing with Petra's pod and trying to add in all the stories into her programming so stories wouldn't disappear. Because at this point, he's an old man. The council, no, not the council. The order? Wait, what is it called again? Whatever it's called. It's not worth it. It's a bad group. The council, I'm gonna call it something. You know what I mean if you're listening to spoilers. The group has taken over. Ben is an old man. All we know is that he's an old man. We don't know how old he is, what the time frame is. We just know that he's old and he's rebelling, and he tries to make sure that Petra has all the stories. And they catch him in the act of messing with her pod, and he makes a comment saying, "I can't imagine a future without stories." So this is his, besides his act of rebellion, his act of trying to save culture and literature and things like that. This initially is the benefit of Petra's pod being slightly defective. And my thoughts also on the pod, and please let me know what you guys think or if anyone's thought about anything. So I have two thoughts. Thought one is that Ben put her in like this weird mid-temporary space so that she could make it to her 13th birthday and be able to be considered a teen and get her supplementary course, which then he would supplement himself. Two, it is defective because of her eyes, because she doesn't have like a perfect genome. So because of that, and because of her defect, it affects the connection. So those are my thoughts. There is a tiny amount of like third theory that it's just because she's super well-powered and super strong and magical. So just based off of how she reacts when the adult node is put on her. So yeah. But so yeah, new definitions of book banning. This is like book thief like 5.0. Forget about 2.0, 5.0. People trying to save things. I also put at 50%, because it's not 50%, but we're getting there. I'm surprised how easily everyone was won over and willing to give up. And I still believe that, but my question is, how, not that the answer really is necessary or it means anything, and we don't get it in the book, and if we did and I missed it, please let me know. How many people from the order, the collective, there we go, from the collective made it on the ship? And if it wasn't that many, if it was just the head moderator, maybe one or two other people, because I highly doubt it was just the head moderator and that was it. They had to have slipped a couple other people in there. How easily were these people swayed? And was it more of a big force where there was just a few people persuaded, but those people were, besides the people in power, were brutally persuasive and made many people disappear like that? So, curious, very curious. But yeah, I'm surprised, but you know what? Also at this point, even in now's time, where we have literal histories of tyrants starting literal world wars because of bullshit very similar to this, why couldn't it repeat? I mean, it's literally attempting to repeat now to certain extents. So, very thoughts. But okay, so track 11. I make a comment on the homogeny that I was talking about at the beginning in the non-spoilery section. So they've genetically chosen genes that are more favorable. So pretty much everybody looks the same. And we do find out later, which I didn't make. Oh, I did make a comment in a different track, in track 16. So we're going to skip a little bit. I did. So actually, before we skip 12, I just say that I love the story already. So track 6, I again make a comment on the genes and the genetics. So I'm right. It sounds like the children are genetically made, not natural. And because they talk about batches, and Foxy, much later towards the end of the story, Nyla talks about how Foxy's going to have kids closer in his age. So obviously Voxy must have been some special patch or batch, excuse me, and was born exclusively by himself on his own. But it also sounds like they were having problems. So, and this is something that I have read a couple articles on and seen a couple of videos on, especially when I was taking medical classes. When we talk about genetics and the idea of genetic manipulation and trying to, like duplicate our own cells so that we can replace our old hearts with new hearts from our own cells, the problem is a genome can only be copied or stretched or modified so much before it starts degrading and falling apart and having errors. This is the exact same reason why incest is technically dangerous, and there are genetic consequences to incest. So besides the social norms that we as an overall world society have decided that incest is bad and yucky and gross, very much so, except for random small pockets of people and groups of people. So besides that, there's also a genetic problem. So if you see people who are the offspring of incest, and it's usually incest down a couple down the line, there is consequences. Now, if you have incest from, let's say, a brother and sister, right away, sometimes right away you can have a genetic mutation or a genetic complication that then is reflected on the child, whether it's a physical deformation or mental deformation. That is more rare. Now, if you've been having brother and sister, brother and sister, brother and sister, brother and sister, or brother, first cousin, or parent and child, one after another, then genetic mutations, genetic mishaps, and degrading of the genome happens more often, and it becomes more obvious, especially with physical deformations. So many royals have this very obvious. I believe it is a line of French royals. They have this shape to their jawline that is specifically named after this royal family because of their incest, and it is common in their genome, and it's from all the incest they had. So there are many cases in our history where when you specifically groom genetics, the genome can only hold out for so long before it starts degrading and before the copying of the genome pops up with problems. And it seems like for many few years, they have been doing this. So they've been taking the best parts of probably the people on the ship, probably even the people who were in cryostasis. There was probably some stolen genetic material from the people in the cryopods. I wouldn't be surprised. Sadly, there's a lot of as an adult reading the story, some undertones of possible consent problems, which just again feeds into why the collective is a bad group. And they took the best parts of, or what they perceived as the best and or desirable parts of the human genome and synthesized it and continued to copy, adjust when you need to, copy. So we, Petra describes them as constantly, she describes them as spatial. So their skin is very thin, their skin is slightly translucent, she could see veins through them. Their hair is all the same, it's short, coarse hair, which makes sense when you think about it, because if they're living on a spaceship, they don't need a very thick epidermis because they don't have to worry about exposure to a sun because they have artificial lights. And after so many years, their epidermis probably would have naturally started to degrade slightly if this genetic manipulation had never happened. Probably would have changed throughout the years slightly anyways, and the people who ran the ship probably would have had a problem going down on the planet anyways. But they so genetically effed themselves up that when they do send Petra and the children down to collect samples and test if the air is breathable, because, you know, why send your own people when you can just have human brainwash sacrifices? So, they do send one person from the collective, and it's kind of inferred that this person is a mutation. This person does not fall in line with the straight collective situation. We don't exactly know what's wrong with this person, but obviously they are picked. They weren't a volunteer. They were forcibly picked to go down, and you can tell this person's terrified, even though they have like these tonic mood stabilizers to help keep everybody in line, so people don't question things and panics don't happen, so on and so forth. This poor man drinks tons of tonic to stay calm, and he's just not. And some of that could be partially because his genetics are not predisposed to being susceptible to the tonic, or it could just be the human fight, flight, freeze response, where it's just a natural, not even human necessarily, like animalistic response, and we are animals. So it could just be an override system that is much stronger in him, and he could not override no matter how much tonic he drank. And he's chosen as the guinea pig, as the sacrifice. And in the end, he is a sacrifice, which I feel really, really bad for him. I bet they weren't even trying very hard to heal him and just wanted to see if he could self-heal and pretty much let him die. Probably in excruciating pain, because it did seem like Nala didn't give a crap's ass about if this man died. So, yeah, and he obviously gets exposed to the sun, and he experiences like next level like sunburn, like extreme. Like the way they describe it sounds like he touched like his skin to an open flame, or like touched a burning stove. He like starts to have welts and all this other stuff. He experiences nausea at some point before the welts happen. And later, thinking about it, he's pretty much going through like heat stroke and getting sunburned extremely, because they're used to living in a controlled environment on the ship where, again, they don't need a very strong epidermis, and Yeah, so from a science and a medical standpoint, great. But the author did so much research. Brilliant. Brilliant. From a story and like a person standpoint, I feel really bad for this guy. And he really is just a throwaway. They don't care if he lives or dies. Honestly, not that Nyla says this, I wouldn't be surprised if she would have preferred that he die, so he's not a drain on the collective, because then he's not for the benefit of the collective. But his death and whatever information they collect from him just helps them decide that they need to go. They need to stay in space and run more tests and mess with their genome a little bit more so that they fix their epidermis, which just means they're going to have a thicker skin, quite literally, unless they find another planet that's more suitable, which would probably just mean they need a planet that's farther away from the sun. So it wouldn't necessarily be a Goldilocks situation, technically. Yeah, that's a scientific part we don't have to worry about. Okay, I have rambled on about genetics, so let's continue. So chapter 18, I just say, damn, I don't know what that's about because I'm descriptive. Okay, so at chapter 19, track 19, we find or introduce, technically we're introduced to him much earlier. Well, that's a double-edged thing. But we're introduced when she sneaks into the hole to look at all the pods and finds that her parents died. We are introduced to another human adult. So she's in the hole to steal supplies so that they can run away. And the person who finds her is another human adult. And I state human as in a person from Earth, not one of the collective who's run up on the ship. So, really excited. She's hoping that she can break through the brainwash. And then, so on my thing, this is where it's like I pretty much read the last half of this in a day and a half, something like that. So I never updated Ko-fi, and this was like back updating, and I was trying to think of where everything was based because I'm bad. But so at 75%, I just put that she's so brave, and I love the story. She's telling the stories that she's telling. So the cuentas, which I agree, her spinning, and somebody who wants to start doing retellings and reimaginings of a lot of these ancient folklore and myths, very inspirational, very inspirational. And then, we won't get to 100. So at track 21, after she has been introduced to the adult human and worked with them, she bumps into / figures out that Boxy has been listening to her podcasts and her stories. And since we've met Boxy, you kind of notice the little boy is different. There's something different about this child. He is an abnormality. Somehow he is unique and he has self-thought and is not easily manipulated by the other adults on the ship. Now, so in context, it's very much hinted at reference. Bella doesn't even want to acknowledge it, but I'm going to acknowledge it. Obviously, Boxy, most likely the reason why he was born alone by himself, pending anything like maybe the rest of the kids born in his lot died from genetic problems, unless something like that happened. The likelihood is he was specifically designed and made to be the next chancellor. So Nyla is the person he lives with. Nyla is a person who is raising him, like pseudo parent-ish, like guardian situation. She's the chancellor, so she's the boss, even though they're a collective, and there's the idea of a collective would kind of be everyone votes and gets an opinion, so on and so forth. Not really. It really feels more like a dictatorship, honestly. With the chancellor being at the top. And there's definitely this fear thing where Nyla is not afraid to just be like, you're not helpful, goodbye, you're going to be purged, which pretty much means you're going to die. I don't know how they kill people, because this is a children's book and we don't outright kill people. So, most likely, Voxy was designed and born so that he could take over as the next chancellor, especially given the fact that he is the only child of his age and he is staying with the chancellor in her quarters, and they have a very close, I'm not going to say intimate, I don't feel like it's an intimate relationship, like an actual parental relationship. It's a close-ish relationship, as close as someone who begrudgingly decides that they need to care for a child. So, and you can kind of tell, like, sometimes it seems like Nyla does care for Voxy, and then there are other times where, actually the majority of the time, it very much seems more like she's doing it out of duty, and she has to do it for the collective. She can't say no. There is no other alternative, and she's just doing it because it needs to be done. So, definitely no love spirit there. But then we get to track 23. Oh, so also by track 21, I love that she finally found, and I love that it's through Voxy, she finally found her pendant. She finally finds the book for her brother. And yeah, best. So by track 23, she has the surprise of the whole book. Honestly, biggest surprise. Humongous surprise. This surprise, I think, overpowers the surprise at the end of the book. To me. Emotionally, to me. So, when she is hunting through the capsules, goes through her parents, it talks about when they were woken up and that they had to be reprogrammed, and then the programming didn't work, so they were purged. And she goes through that whole sequence for both of her parents. She gets to her brother, and it says that her brother Javier was woken, needed to be reprogrammed, and then she gets interrupted and actually doesn't see if he was purged or not. But it's such a rushed situation because this is when the adult first shows up, and she doesn't know it's a human adult. She just hears a voice, freaks out, runs away, and doesn't finish reading the stuff in her brother's pod. Which, if she had, she would have noticed that it said reprogramming was successful, because we find out that Gamma, I think that's what his title is. I don't remember. Javier, brainwashed Javier, is the person, the human adult that she's been working with in the lab. The person that, for whatever reason, she has felt like a strong connection for, and it's literally because it's her brother. She, and Javier is old. He has gray hair. Once it clicks in her brain, she realizes that he looks a lot like her dad, and she can see her brother through this old man. And how she notices that the main giveaway is she sees his hand, and it's mentioned a few times at the beginning that Javier has a special birthmark on his hand that looks like a constellation of stars. And she notices that on the old Javier, and it hits her. And she decides that she needs to save her brother. And she goes back for the book because she ended up leaving it with Foxy because Foxy is in love with the book and didn't want to let it go, pretty much. Also afraid that Nyla would find out it's disappeared because Foxy doesn't know she's running away. So she goes back, she sneaks into a meeting, finds out that they're not staying on the planet and they're going to leave, and sneaks into the ship and sneaks in, gets the book. Now, she tries to reach through to Javier, who again, remember, was initially attempted at brainwashed, didn't succeed, and had to re-brainwash him. Then it took. So she tries to ask him if he remembers anything before he went to sleep. He's like, no, there was nothing before that. So instead of pushing, what she does is she sits down with said old man and reads him the storybook, which I thought was beautiful. So the storybook was originally hers, and then gave it to her brother, or some, I don't remember exactly how that transitioned, but they're sibling things forward. But he finds so much comfort in the book, like huge comfort. And she hopes because of that, it triggers him. And it does. And it's like the most cutest reunion. I've read tons of war romances and just war stories because I have a problem. And I don't think I have ever read a reunion that was so heartwarming and beautiful. And I was so happy and so moved. I was at work and I was like, oh my God. And she still sees him as little Javier, especially because it's very obvious that Javier has had a stroke or possibly has Parkinson's, something along those lines. So he's not well. And he's barely holding on to being a resource for the collective. So she's worried. And this starts the process of gonna run away, escape. Then the next part is so we get a faked out betrayal. Oh my God. I was told that this was happy. And I was like, how is it? No, what the freaking freak? He betrays her. I was like, no. There has to be a reason. There's some reason. There's something. This is not happening. He whispers into Voxy's ear. So it's kind of like, maybe. But then she goes to sleep. She has this whole dream sequence and they almost fully they almost reprogrammed her brain. She's starting to fade away. And any hope I had that Javier was going to come back was slowly disappearing as the books in her mind start deteriorating. I was like, oh no. Because we do find out that Ben was successful. So she's been having these weird dreams where she's been needing to follow Bunny, but she's been refusing because she thinks it's a trick. And eventually, because it's the end, she's like, I'm going to pretty much die anyways. She's going to be reprogrammed. So she decides, I'm going to follow Bunny. Bunny takes her to mental thing Ben. And where Ben collects all the books because this old man was way smarter than all the fucking people on the collective, because he still successfully programmed her nodule to give her all these books, and they were just hidden in like a security layer in her brain. And through following this bunny, which is representation of a trickster god, and I can't remember what his name is right now, was a which so she feels like she never follows the bunny because the bunny is represented of a trickster god, and she sees it as bad. But as a double narrative of that, the bunny is a trickster because it's been successfully tricking the collective and allowing her to have these books and stories. So I love that symbology in that. It's like, yes, perfect. Yes. But yeah, so then later she gets pulled out of her mental nightmare / dream thingamabob situation, and we find out that Javier, it was a trick, and Javier just did it so that he could successfully get Petra into the shuttle, and all the other human kids that were woken up with her, the last batch of human kids, because the collective have brutally and horribly slowly woken up everybody throughout these hundreds of year journey for when they wanted people to be productive. So they've mass murdered, killed hundreds of people who could not be successfully programmed, like her parents, and then have brainwashed and pretty much set on like a death row situation hundreds of other people and kids because they were waking up early, and then their identities were stolen from them. And I'm just like, oh my god, that's worse. That's the worst war crime of all war crimes, and it's not even a war. Like, this again, this has to be against like just the idea of just like the convention, like, against human rights. Like, oh my god. But yeah, okay, so when I figured out before she figured out what Javier was gonna do, and I was like, no, this is the end of the book, this is a happy ending, we can't, no. And he does self-sacrifice. He's like, I'm an old man, I'm useless, I'm gonna do this one thing, thank you for letting me die as me, I love you, sister. And then he keeps the book. Oh my god, I literally almost started crying at work. I was at the desk trying to do like finalize some papers, and I had to take a moment because I was like, I'm gonna fucking cry at the front desk of my unit. I was like, no. And she's like screaming and like freaking out, and I'm just like, oh my god, no. I hate sibling stories because I'm the older sibling of 3, and I literally do this when I watch The Hunger Games. I will start tearing up at the beginning when Katniss volunteers because I'm like, fuck, I would do that for my sister. I may die in like 2 seconds of the games, but I would volunteer for my sister. Oh my god. I want to cry now. Like, he sacrificed himself. And then on top of that, later, so Nyla wants to poison the original people so they send out the ships in batches because obviously it's going to take hundreds of years and blah, 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 blah. So the first ship that went out were the terraformers, the farmers, people who would get the world set up for future humans. And then their ship was going to come with all the scientists and everything, and pretty much right behind them, in a closer proximity than the first ship, was going to be like the politicians, all the like smart people. I shouldn't say smart people. scientists, but like the politicians, like the people who make decisions. That ship never left. So, which now that I think about it, was probably the plan. Whatever. We're not gonna think about that. Either way, Nyla was like, oh, these people are bad because they embrace humanity and we are the new humanity. We are actually, they don't even really call themselves humans. They always just refer to the collective. Like the collective is some big giant overlord. Like I was literally, part of me was waiting for like the AI to be like, I'm the collective, or for some other person to pop up, but no, that never happened. That's not the point, but it felt like it. It felt like the collective was a physical force that was a bad guy. And it was just the ideology / Nyla. So Petra finds out that they're gonna kill all the humans. And that would mess up her escape plan as well, because they're gonna need the humans, the adults, to survive. And what she ends up realizing is somehow in the like very quick moments of trying to escape and get all the human kids onto the shuttle and all this other stuff, Javier has manipulated the poison that Nyla was going to send out and made it non-toxic. So the collective leaves thinking that the world is going to be poisoned, and when they come back, they'll have a fresh blank slate that they can populate. But in reality, no, humans are still there, because in the end, the big shock, the shock that I think is supposed to be the big shock, because it kind of leads up to, before she realizes that there's actually no poison, is that there is a settlement. There's humans, and they've been surviving like underground somehow, or like pseudo underground. There's like noise that comes from a cave, and it's a guitar, stuff like that. But I was after finding out that Javier was not dead, I will honestly say the surprise that there were humans there was not as surprising. It did not hit me as like, oh, we're gonna die, and she's thinking about how can they survive. They have no food, and she's like flipping back and forth between this like panic of, okay, we need to find shelter, and how are we gonna live, and I have to try and keep everyone alive, and back and forth. And then the music comes out of a cave and all this stuff, and I was just like, I cool, but yeah, that was my thought of the end. I'm just like, if this was supposed to make me have an emotional reaction, it did not, because my emotions were already effed up because of everything that had to do with Javier. So, yeah. But I already also, before that, I loved that she was making her own mythology for this new world. And no matter what you feel about the gods and about folklore or anything like that, that's how all these start. One story at a time. Whether there's truth or lies or half-truths, secrets. Yeah, one story at a time. So, I'm going to end spoilers here, because I don't know what else to say. Again, it's a middle grade to smaller book. But I'm going to give my overall thoughts. Okay, so, ranting that happened in the spoiler section. Whew, all right, overall thoughts on how I felt, my opinions. This book had great representation on, thank you, tablet, on many definitions. Now, I say great as in a general because I can't give a very personal personal stance on this. But Petra had a eye condition where she was partially blind and would progressively going blind. Ironically, I recently started following some YouTubers, which I will. I gotta double check that if they have the same condition, but if they do, I'll link them down below. Some YouTubers that have the same condition as Petra, and from what I see from them, it seems like it was very truthful. But again, because I can't say for sure, let me know down below if you disagree or your opinion on that. Now, on the cultural side, Mexican American. Did I feel represented? Did I feel seen? Yes. In a very unique way. Again, as someone who self-identifies as Mexican American, who is also a storyteller, who enjoys stories, this spoke to me, I feel like, on a personal level. Now, when I went to the Festival of Books, Angelina Lopez, yes? Yes, Angelina Lopez. Person who wrote After Hours on Milagro Street, which I did a video. No, did I do a video? No, I did. I don't remember. Either way, it's not out yet. Or actually, hopefully it's out by the time this is out. Either way. So I have a backlog. But she wrote this. I met her at the Festival of Books. Told her I was writing sci-fi. At the time, I was writing Project Sci-Fi Romance, but I mentioned that I wanted to write mythologies in space, but based off of ours. She recommended this book, not knowing that it was already on my list, and it was most likely going to be our read at some point this year. So, and she said it had a very interesting and unique spin on folklore and mythology and how to tell it in the future. And I agree. Because at this point, it's been hundreds of years since Aztec and Mayan times, and hundreds of years even from now time, and how we interpret and how we read and how we see stories. And I also love how her grandmother, and it's mostly Petra remembering what her grandmother is saying, what her abuela is saying, and talking about sharing and expressing and telling stories. There is no rule. There is no rule. And you're allowed to alter the story when deemed necessary. And that's something at the beginning she doesn't realize, because when she's leaving and it's her last day with her abuela, she says that she hopes that she remembers all the stories and that she can retell them the way she does. And her abuela tells her no, to make the stories her own. And she dismisses it at first and says no, but later she reflects on what her abuela said about stories and her telling the stories, and then they were stories that her mother told her and her grandmother and so on and so forth, this generational line. And I love that. And that idea of probably the original story is not what we even remember. And it's also that kind of the idea of telephone, but telephone in a positive way, because you tell the story that needs to be told. So in the book, literally, Betha is adapting some of her stories to what they need to say in that moment. So she's telling the other children these stories and hoping that it helps them remember Earth and also helps them reconnect to what's happening in the situation and bring them comfort. And even though we don't 100% know the ethnicities of all the other kids, there's this idea of it doesn't matter, but because the story is ours, we can share in this one knowing of it. So I love that. And there's a story that pretty much keeps being retold and in Vetra's head about Quetzalcoatl and Earth, and it's referencing to Halley's Comet. And in the end, she takes that story, alters it, and changes it to again bring comfort to the kids. When her abuela told her the story at the beginning to give her comfort and courage to leave. So I love that. I love the meaning behind it. I love the story behind it. And I love that cultural understanding, especially as I am currently writing. Actually, I'm not even physically writing it. I'm still world building and figuring out how I'm going to take parts of stories about Aztec mythology. And it really gives me not a drive, but it gives me enthusiasm to alter the story to the way I want it to be told, but still keeping the core meaning of the story. Because every time she changes or alters the story, she even references the little things she's changing based off of her situation. And maybe the story at the moment, the meaning at the moment is slightly different, but the overall structure is the same. Does that make sense? Oh, I don't know if I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense. But I love that, and I thought that was a great message to be said, especially as, again, other mythologies have been retold and resaid hundreds of thousands of times. Can you tell me you know the original story of the Hades and Persephone? How many of you who have read hundreds of retellings can positively tell me you know the original? So, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's bad, but again, as someone who is stepping into this space that is not as much touched from what I know, it's encouraging. And I think I did need to read this. I need to read this because I feel like it gave me permission. Not that I need permission, and I mentioned this in the Festival of Books vlog, but it felt like I have permission to just go. Be respectful, but go. So I loved it. Now, was there huge representation for Mexican American? Not really, and some of that was mostly because this was being told in the future. There's a couple things about the abuela which I understood and felt a little bit more reference, and I think that's based off of the abuela was born and brought up in a time that's slightly closer to right now. But food wise, she constantly talks about food and like spices and chilies in the reference to the bland food that they're forced to eat. So there's a lot of good sprinkled representation that I think again is good and healthy. Now, I have not rated this, so we're gonna do this right now. I'm gonna put that I finished the book, and we're going to add the stars. So this is obviously going to be a 4. Now, if anyone knows anything, it's really hard for me to give a 5. And I've been on the fence because part of me feels like this should be a 5 because it was beautiful and wonderful. It literally almost made me cry. I think the message behind it is amazing, but I also feel like there's a couple different messages, and I can see the main message for kids and the idea of everyone being the same isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you lose so much and it's not worth it. What makes us different is what makes us stronger. And the idea that all the kids being different were able to defy so on and so forth. So, but then there's all these other messages as an adult that I can see. And also, I could be overthinking. Let me know too about that. Ugh. I'm going to keep it at a 4. I may change it to a 5. But for right now, I'm keeping it at a 4. And I'm going to put it, because I'm doing this in StarCraft, 475. Highest 4 rating. And most of the time, these are like 4.5, because that's pretty much my standard rating for everything. If it was good, I liked it, I enjoyed it. I even maybe threw out the word that I loved it. Probably going to be 4.5. Maybe you'll get a 4.75. This is the first time in a while that I've really been on the fence about making a book a 5. But I think I need to sit, because I literally just finished the book Saturday and it's Monday. So I think I need to sit with it. I might reread the ending. I don't know. But I feel like my voice is getting all weird. But yeah, we're gonna put it at a 475. That's my star rating, with the possibility of changing to a 5. Maybe I'll put that in eventually. But yes. Do I recommend this? Yes. Read this. Even if you're not Latine, but you want to write stories about your culture or your mythology or your folklore, and you're from another group, if you're Arab, if you're from Southeast Asia and the islands and places that are underrepresented, and you're like me and you're nervous and you're like, am I the person to do this? First of all, as I tell myself, yes, you are. You can do this. If you still need permission, read this. Read this and get your permission. Literally get a little old abuela to tell you it's okay. Make the stories. Make your stories. Share your stories. Your interpretations. So, yeah. That's it. That's all I have to say. It was oh, I'm really thinking about if I should put it to a 5 as I'm speaking. I'll decide. I'll put it. If I changed it, I'll put it here. But okay. Also linked down below will be the Storygraph page. So if you want to read about any content warnings, because there is definitely some content warnings. I did talk about grief. There's definitely some grief in there. If you watch, if you watch some people like to watch spoilers before they read the book. There's some stuff I mentioned in there, so there's definitely those kind of content warnings also. But if you want solid content warnings, I always recommend go to Storygraph, because there you have a list of content warnings. Sometimes the author puts in content warnings, and other times it's us, the readers, putting in content warnings. So you can check out content warnings there. And also linked down below will be a link to Bookshop, where you can buy the book. And if you buy it from my shelf, I will get it's an affiliate link, and I will get some affiliate from that. But also, if you don't want to, you can just use Bookshop, and I recommend Bookshop over anything else, because Bookshop helps represent independent bookstores. And if you haven't heard of Bookshop, test it. If you know an independent bookstore, or even if you don't, Bookshop has an option where you can just put in your GPS, your zip code, and it will show you a list of independent bookstores in your area, and you can go check them out. You can check out their websites, and then pick one, and it's kind of like adopting a store. And every time you buy a book, the proceeds go to that book. Now, if you don't have an independent bookstore close by you, or you don't want to pick an independent bookstore, if you just buy directly through Bookshop, the money goes into a pool that then is distributed to all the independent bookshops in the program also. So again, it is, I want to say technically, nope, I'm not going to say that because I can't remember. But either way, Bookshop supports independent bookstores. I have been using Bookshop pretty much exclusively since I found it. The book I held up, no, not that one. That one I bought at the Festival of Books, which helps the Festival of Books. But actually, no, I bought that from an independent bookstore that was partnered with the library. That was a thing. You can go watch that video. Whatever. Other books I've held up in other ones of these, I did get through Bookshop. So either way, yeah. And if you're wanting to know any of the other books I've read during this series, I do have a shelf on my Bookshop page where you can go check out all the books that I've looked at and read those and buy them. And again, if you purchase from my shelf, you're supporting me. So I appreciate that. But again, you don't have to support an independent bookstore. Don't go to Amazon. Don't buy it on Amazon. Also, you don't have to buy just physical books. Some books you can buy physical CDs. So there's a couple other options. Also, link down below will be a link to Libro FM, which is an alternative to Audible. This is where you can get all of your audiobooks. This is how I listened to it. You can become a member for Audible for $14.99. Yes, that's what I'm paying. $14.99, and you get a credit every month. That's pretty much how I buy all my books. You also get a discount if you're going to outright buy a book, an audiobook from Libro FM, but they function exactly like Bookshop, where you can adopt an independent bookstore, and the proceeds then go to that independent bookstore that you have chosen. I will have a referral link, I think is what it is. Yeah, it will be, I will say what it is down below, where I think I get a discount or a free credit or something like that. I don't remember what happens if you buy something with my link code. Honestly, I'll admit that. You don't have to use my link code. Just look up Libro FM, adopt a local independent bookstore, or just buy through Libro FM and contribute to the pool that will then go to other independent bookstores. Also, if you use Storygraph, on Storygraph, there's an option where it tells you to buy. If you click that, it will send you to Bookshop because they're a partner. It will send you to Libro FM because they're a partner. So these three programs are integrated and help feed each other and support independent bookstores. So check out from there. And if you can't, because money is tight and money is hard, so trust me, I understand that, go to your library. Check it out from the library. Listen to it on audiobooks in your library. Check out the ebook. Check out the physical. Support your library. So, yeah, we're going to go with the whole spiel. But yeah, all those links are the library. But all the other links will be down below. And yeah, check out the book for yourself. Again, it's not that long. It's a middle grade, but it was beautiful. And I would say it's an upper middle grade to me. Not that I read a lot of middle grade, but I feel like it's a middle grade. And if you're interested in anything else that I have in this series where I review Latine authored books, at the end in this corner will be a card that will send you to a playlist with all the other videos. Also, every quarter I read a Latine authored book in a book club on my Ko-fi. Not every book in the book club becomes a video, so if you're wanting to find out what else I recommend and what I read, check out the Ko-fi, because every book that's going to be a video will be part of the book club, but not every book in the book club is a video. So if you don't want to miss out, again, check out Ko-fi, become a member. It's $2. Yes, $2 to be able to get all the benefits for memberships right now, and that includes the book club. And you'll get my first thoughts first. Not that, again, I'm great at it, but my first thoughts on the book. And hey, if someone's there to talk with me, I might get better at sharing timely. And we do have a strict policy in the comment section. If you're going to talk about spoilers outside of how I segment it for 25, 50, 75, and 100, you have to make sure to tag it as a spoiler if it's right at the top, and then put your information or your comment, because spoilers are mean. I also don't want to come and try to contribute to the conversation and be spoiled. And my own book club. So, but either way, yes. So check that out there. Or if you just want to see another video I have, you over here, there'll be another whatever YouTube things you'd like from my other content. But yeah, so again, my name is Dolores Medill, and I have mainly writing content in my journey to write Latine mythology and Latine inspired stories-ish. And you can watch vlogs on my journey. I also do this series, and I do occasionally tags and vlogs about book festivals and conferences. And I have and on my second channel, I do have writing sprints. If you want to come and write with me, you can check me out there. I also do gaming content on my second channel, so if you're wanting to just chill and take a break from writing or take a break from reading, you can come hang out with me when I play games. Alright, I'm gonna go. I'm rambling. My throat hurts. I will see you later. Bye. Tell stories and prosper.